Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning and happy Tuesday, gentlemen.
You know, for a lot of people, good morning, happy Tuesday. That may sound normal, but for us right now, as we get into Thanksgiving, this is really impressive, Seth. We're like 2 months in the future or something. I don't even know how far we are.
Oh, yes.
That's pretty good. I am always wondering on Tuesdays, will Seth do it? And it makes me happy.
But you mean you're always wondering on pre-recorded Tuesdays, will Seth do it?
Especially pre-recorded Tuesdays, yes.
Agree on that one.
So, as you can tell, this is a pre-recorded podcast.
There you go. This is a pre-recorded. Caution, everyone. This is a pre-recorded podcast. We should be live again on Thursday this week. So just FYI, there'll be a real one coming up here pretty soon. You'll be able to chat in the chat comments, and we'll be here to respond and have sarcastic comments back for you soon. So don't worry, they will be there. Today's main topic here is we're going to talk about something that has been coming out from the Microsoft product team for a while now. Miguel Myers is the gentleman who's running this team, and it's Power BI Core Visuals, PBI Core Visuals is what he's calling it. And there's actually a whole site on LinkedIn, which will be in the description below, that's just talks about the Core Visual team and things that the Core Visual team is building or doing or making. So this is, I guess, the topic of in desktop, you get all these new visuals now that have a little lightning bolt next to them. So apparently we get 2 of everything now, and now new ones with lightning bolts. It's kind of fun. So that being said, let's jump into some of the main topic today. So Tommy, just give a quick introduction. What's kind of our main topic here around core visuals? And maybe we can talk about some of the recent releases that have been happening in that area.
I think there's a few main questions that I want to get across. Is we know that Microsoft, Miguel Myers especially, and his team have been making some pretty significant improvements to standard visuals, not different visuals, but slicer, card, the new text slicer that they've came out. And I think where we're getting to a point now is, where are we at with core visuals? When should we start using them? Should they overtake the standard visuals in our daily deployment? And where do we go from here? And I think that's kind of the arc of our conversation today.
Mm-hmm. I think that sounds fair. Let me ask just a general question to kind of kick things off here. As these new visuals have been coming out, how much of you guys have been exploring, like playing with them, working on all the options, trying to explore what they can do and what they can't do? Have you guys been kind of noodling around with the visuals a lot?
One of them in particular, yes. Immediately. Straight to prod.
Really?
The matrix changes, layouts changes that they did 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Just night and day difference. It was the biggest complaint that I had in any of my reports was matrices and how they worked. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean the additional ways to compress or consolidate, almost create the table-like experience. Instant win.
Why this wasn't kind of built out of the box to begin with, and the tables and matrices didn't match? We already have the world's best tool for tables and matrix. It's called Excel.
Right.
You own it.
Why it doesn't match that experience and give you exactly what's already there, I don't know.
You know, what is, you say that, and then I go, in my own world, right? One of the fastest accelerators is to go talk to the folks who did something first, better, right?
Yeah.
Cross collaboration. Like, to your point, why are there so many misses in Microsoft? Like, I get it. These are big teams. These are different areas. These are whatever. But at the same time, it's like you have the best of the best. Like you can't get some input, or like is tech stack too hard? I don't know, man. Maybe there was no cross collaboration, but missed opportunity out of the boat, I think.
I mean, I think also there's maybe something that's correlating different here. I mean, we're talking about 2 different tech spaces, maybe potentially, right? So
100%.
Excel is whatever it's written in, I don't know, C#, .NET, I don't know, something, right? And then you flip over to, Power BI, which is all supposed to be web-based. And so I get it. It's different technology. But why wouldn't we focus harder on if the table exists in Excel and it has these filtering by columns and all these other kind of extra features, people are going to be, just my impression with this, you sit back and you look, What do people use already today, currently in their workflows? They're using Excel. They're going to be comfortable with that standard. What are the top 15 features that you need to have in those Excel sheets or tables that you're going to want to carry through? Just carry them through.
Yeah.
I
mean,
don't remember who said this. Okay.
No, I was just gonna say, like, even if it's hey, we're gonna build tables and matrices, can you guys share anything from a user experience perspective?
Right.
Since you've been gathering information about how people use tables and matrices since
For
1987,
like 30 years.
You're like, there's got to be some nuggets in there. Was there something they hated?
Yeah. Yes.
I don't remember where I was, and I remember this strong. I was in a Q&A with someone with Microsoft or someone who worked with Microsoft. And they're like, is Excel still going to be around? And I remember the strong statement, which I still love. He's like, yeah, Excel's kind of like the cockroach of products. It was here before you, and it's going to be here after you. It's not dying. It's not going to
Do you
die.
think, if I was an Excel guy, well, I think all of us are Excel guys.
Oh,
but,
I
like,
would use
deep in
total.
this. There's got to be some self-satisfaction of like hitching onto the right tool that has outlived how many versions of other reporting or data tools that have come out, right? Like, yeah, it's been around, and I guarantee
I
it
mean,
will
heck, look at
continue
Power
to be
BI.
around.
Power
forever.
BI has evolved incredibly. We have Microsoft Fabric, Excel.
Mhm. Yeah.
What? Yeah. So, question about tables, and when we've talked about visuals, I was looking something up. This is not an exaggeration. When do you think the first time we did an episode devoted to tables? Let's see if you can
Episode
think
2.
of episode 2. What do you think, Seth?
That's probably not it.
Like dedicated to the full
Yeah,
172.
31. So pretty early on, I think we
Wow.
I thought it was Mike. I thought it was like episode 3 or 4 too. I thought.
Did we complain about them again in
Oh,
that
yeah.
episode too?
What is
pretty
the
sure.
role?
We did at
So
episode
let me
172.
Let me give you the description. What
Gotcha.
sometimes we have to play the game.
About every 100
roll
episodes, we
table.
complain about tables again.
Let's face it, tables and matrices are necessary evil. I used to write a longer description than I do now. Tables and matrices are necessary evil in Power BI. So that's how we started off the description. But I think this goes without saying, the table experience is much better. And because they're making updates, to your earlier question, Mike, about kind of some of the core visuals, I immediately dived into the new card updates because I love the new card updates in Power BI. The ability to do one small multiples, to be able to choose multiple measures there. It's like, oh, you mean I don't have to repeat the same process for every dang KPI I have? It was pretty incredible. And
that was a huge performance improvement too. Like
performance improvement, yeah.
That also, because if you want to run one visual, multiple measures for that visual,
you're not.
I don't know if it's called DAX Fusion or whatever it is, but it knows it can then take all these measures and make a single object of them and run one query as opposed to one for every object of every single visual that you're putting on the page there. So anything you're doing to combine multiple visuals together into one single object is a big win from the data side.
This is their true KPI card. Do you remember? I don't know if you guys ever played around with it, but this was a Microsoft custom visual, the Power KPIs.
Yeah, I played around with that one, but I didn't really know.
My gosh, that was the most frustrating.
Yeah, it was frustrating
because, anyways, so for some of you, and I'm sure it's on the custom visual store, but Microsoft, I think, has struggled for a while with KPIs or having a good visual. There are some custom KPIs. Microsoft came with Power KPI. Try it out. See what your experience you have if you're listening. But the card KPI now, you can do icons, conditional formatting icons. So you can actually put an arrow down. You can do a ton of other things. The formatting, it meets the requirement. However, though, what I'm curious and I'll see what you guys think is, as much as I use those new visuals, when I do training, when I'm doing some standard deployment, I'm not using the new ones yet. For myself,
why is that? Are you thinking there's too many settings to kind of get it dialed right to make it look good?
I think so, and I think that's right now where it is. One, if there's two instances of the same visual right now, one with the lightning bolt, one that's not, the lightning bolt is also letting us know it's preview. They're not GA. Going back to that conversation, these are still preview features.
Wait, hold on. Are you telling me every single lightning bolt visual is in preview?
It's not GA because it's going to replace the original one when it's GA. Why would you have two cards?
I know, I understand.
I am not
I was just
anything
under the
to say
impression
they're
like they were changing. I thought they were going to just be always two cards. There's going to be like the new version, and there's going to be the old version. For like, hey, we're modernizing. So my thought was the reason you're doing that is because all the old bits, like the new one, won't fully support all the old ones' work. So that's why there's now a new one, and they're like literally making hard code changes. Like so, sometimes
Sure.
you don't
I
want
see what you're saying.
you don't want to support all the old features of something else that just like may or may not have worked. The reason you build a new visual is to like make the new visual and make sure that you're changing the code, you're making breaking changes, all kinds of weird stuff to it. That's what I thought they were doing, but maybe you're right. Maybe they're going to merge them back into one eventually.
That basically means in 2 years we're going to have double the space in the visuals. One half is going to be the old version, the other half is going to be the new. So at some point they're going to replace this your normal visual with what they're updating. The lightning means new, and I don't know if they're saying public preview, but they never said GA. They're just saying we've released this feature. But I don't think they're actually
the new ones say preview.
Okay, so they are
the documentation.
So, and I think that's a big reason why right now for myself with training, I'm not going to all the nifty features of the new card, especially with it's a very different experience.
Really?
Should I? Is that what you're saying?
Do you use any of the custom visuals or third-party visuals?
For myself, but not with the standard. If we're doing basic training, I'm not diving into that. So, and I'm, you know what? That's actually a good point. I'm kind of treating them like they are custom visuals.
Yeah, I would upgrade them to a level higher than that.
That's interesting. Okay.
I would say this. Tommy, to your point, I've outside of the Matrix, instant prod. There are use cases like that, man. Right? Like on a whole, am I just like arbitrarily like swapping everything out? No, but to your point, especially round cards, small multiples, like there are use cases where we got ourselves and you get yourself into trouble, meaning like you've got to create some really, I would argue, like janky kind of multiple visuals sync together. Like, is that better than a single visual that's in preview? Maybe not, right? But like it's when you get pushed into having to refine the look and feel of the report where you're pushed into these for sure. And I don't like, I like to sit blissfully unaware in this preview space with visuals. Just be like, hey, I'm good with it.
Well, the important, I think, cutoff point is not so much the design, is if I'm handing off or I'm doing training. And I think that's where, to me, the decision making really comes into play. Because if I'm designing something for a client, if I'm designing something that I'm not handing it off, it's just kind of my report for them. Yeah, I can use everything in my tool belt. I can use custom visuals. I can use those things. But if I'm developing something that I'm going to hand off to a newer team, I'm not going to probably put all the new, the word I'm going to use, janky features or these additional layers when that's going to be a new team releasing that, where there's already enough information that I'm handing off as it is. If I'm doing training, that's the same point. If we're learning the basics of formatting or the advanced part of formatting, I'm probably not diving into custom visuals either. There's a ton. If you took away custom visuals, if you took away these new cards, the new visuals, there is a million things you can teach people about the standard visuals with conditional formatting. So I don't know. I think the question is, Mike, what about you? Are you using these visuals or encouraging your team to use the new visuals in production and handoff and in training?
I'm going to always be a bit hesitant when I'm running around things with preview. To be honest, I'm playing with them. I'm adjusting. I'm trying to build things with them. I'm seeing a lot of interesting blog posts from people in the community starting to use these things and design patterns. Let me say it this way. I'm really good at copying. I'm not really good at creating. Mm-hmm. So I can play with a lot of things, but I get inspired by other people's ideas and designs and can take what is there and make it look like that. So to have me show up and be like, hey, I'm going to make a bunch of icons and things and make it really snappy and look sharp, I probably can't do that very well. So I'm not using a lot of these preview. I mean, I'm using them to play with them and to figure them out, but I'm not really clicking on them regularly. I'm also really in the space of embedded, and all these new visuals, none of them show in embedded. So none of these new visuals are there. They're not inside that window. You can't create a visual like that inside an embedded experience. So I'm not using them probably as much as I should be using them. Again, I'm just a little bit hesitant on preview. So that's just maybe where I'm kind of like holding back here a bit. I also find interesting in the articles where they start announcing these features, there is no like Microsoft documentation page to do this. You'll notice that there's links that call out, hey, we have a dedicated blog, which the dedicated blog is, I'm guessing Miguel Myers, publishing things on PBI Core Visuals on LinkedIn as a separate area where he's able to maybe control the language, maybe control a bit more of like it doesn't have to go through Microsoft Review. I don't know what they're doing there, but it also is interesting that there is no dedicated Microsoft Learn page around these things as well. I will admit, Miguel is doing an incredible job of documenting these new visuals, and they look really good. He goes through every single feature of the new visual and says, here's the setting, and here's how to change this setting to make the visual change its appearance. But if you think about this, what we're doing now, there's so many more settings now than there were before. We really need, for lack of a better term, I don't know how you want to phrase this, but we need more like styles of these things, like a preset set of styles that would make this visual look good. And you could kind of pick from a list of things, or you could set a bunch of settings and say, these are my styles that I'm going to use for that kind of visual so I could test it. So to me, that's just something that's, I think, very important to have more knowledge of what it can do. We're just not quite there yet. And so that's just my opinion about how I'm working at it. So I like it. It's great. The feature's there. But in order for you to really artistically use these visuals, you've got to really dive in and know what they do and really be comfortable with like all the settings that are there and understand, okay, this setting adjusts these sets of properties. This is one of the things that I think we struggle with as designers is we have people that love building data and models, and then we try and slap on visuals at the end and say, okay, make it look good and move on. This to me is really pushing visuals towards the designer experience. You need someone to really come in and stylize these things for what you want.
I never noticed that.
Never noticed what?
That there's no technical documentation link.
You were so excited about the matrix table thing, you just didn't even.
That's very concerning.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing. I'm kind of indifferent on whether it's not on the Microsoft actual Learn site. But maybe while things are in preview, they're not trying to support it that way, and they needed a place to put. I mean, why wouldn't you put something that's in preview and on the actual Learn page that says here's where maybe they're trying to separate here a little bit. I don't really. Again, my feeling here is I'm not quite sure why this is a decision that they made, but I mean, it's great that there's great documentation. I will admit the Power BI Core Visuals on LinkedIn, the blog that is there, very robust, extremely well written out, very clear as to what you can do. So I thoroughly appreciate the documentation.
I'm going to take a page out of your book, Mike, something that I have adopted. I'm going to read between the lines. I'm going to read the tea leaves here.
Okay.
We know Microsoft is serious about their documentation and very thorough. So I'm very much with Seth here when it comes to, it's very striking. I think that it's not documentation. I think you see articles about the new visuals. I would expect to see more, especially with some of the what's available compared to how much content the community is generating. Because it is significant what they've done, what Miguel's done.
Yeah.
But I'm only seeing like one or two people actually have content out of this. And they're really cool. Yeah.
So I'm with you, Tommy. The feature's amazing. The capabilities are incredible. We get a lot of stuff, but no one's really like talking about it yet.
Right.
And maybe I'm missing the articles at this point. Or maybe it's just like, again, I think this goes back to my point earlier. Like, I'm good at seeing examples of things that are out there and kind of mimicking what I see and being able to do it, right? There's a handful of actual designers that are going to need to go look at this and say, this is how we will implement this so it works well for a style. And what typically happens is there's a handful of people that are building these things. And then from there, everyone gets ideas and they're able to like, and this is where I think the phrase comes from: good artists
Good
borrow,
artists
or
create, great artists steal or copy.
yeah, good artists create and great artists steal, or something like that, something along those lines. But the idea is like, you get inspired by what you see.
So,
And so you take that and then you push it a little bit further, you change it for your needs, you tweak it a little bit more. And so you take something that's inspiring you, it pushes you to do something a bit better or more elaborate than you did before, and it becomes this better thing.
And I think a big honestly, the big reason I would say the documentation, but also because it's right now, again, the question that we have not answered, or I don't think we can answer, is this actually taking place of a standard visual, or this in addition to a standard visual, right? So if Microsoft were to say, hey, we're replacing the card visual with our new one, it's going to happen in July. Like you're just like on-object interaction is going to take place. That changes a lot of, I think, articles coming out, and also the amount of effort I'm going to put into this new style. To your point, I think I'm very much on the copy side, because I did some stuff with the card one. It was just, ugh, like that's terrible, because there's so many settings to play around with. And if it's not a marginal difference for me, it's like, well, and I can see a lot of people too. I am already on a cycle right now. How much time should I spend learning something that's not the actual standard? Is it standard? That question where they're like, I'll just keep the normal table or the normal slicer. It's neat, but is it enough to devote my time? And again, now if I do this, I have to teach other people on my team, or a handoff, right? Because it's a different style. And if I'm the only one, I'm not going to do this mass adoption, because it is not that someone else can't pick it up, but it is a significant change from the norm of any other property pane of a normal Power BI visual.
I'm going to say, I'm going to agree with you, but then maybe slightly change maybe what you said and how I would interpret it. Like, I'm with you in the fact that I would want to make sure that my team has ample time to learn how to use these things. If I'm the designer and building things with these new visuals, great, let's do it. But I would also be cautious to my team and say, I'll need to step back a little bit and just say, let me explain how I did some of the things I did here, because this is kind of introducing potentially new process or work, or just it's a bit different. Now, where I disagree, I think, with you slightly here is it's still the filter pane. All the settings are there, right? So, I mean, it's going to be discoverable, maybe not the easiest way possible, but it will be in the list and you will be able to use it. So for my opinion, I'd like looking at it going, okay, this is not that bad. Let's just make sure we have all the visuals there that we want. And let's just make sure that we've got, so one of the ones I do like is I do like the new card slicer. So if there's one thing that I'm putting on reports, it's the new card slicer, because what I want to do is, if I have multiple cards across the page, I just want to start slapping in a bunch of measures and have a whole bunch of cards just appear in one big block, one big diagram, and just
already aligned.
Already lined, already spaced out, like all the things. So I really like that visual. And if you build your backgrounds correctly, you can just drag one big visual across all the cards at the top, and it just spaces things out correctly. So you can really play some games there, I think, that actually make it pretty easy to work with. So for me personally, I like that feature of this because I think it's pretty straightforward. And what this does for me as a designer is, if I'm looking at the background or the scrim, the image of the page, I can play a bit more games now. I can put like divider lines between each of my cards. So I don't need individual card objects as the visual layer. I can just have one really large wide bar on the image, and then use the KPI card to provide its own dividers in between the cards. So to me, it simplifies what I'm building. And I have to rethink how I build background and background images, because that changes now, because the visual could do a bit more than it could before. And I'm not building extra lines or objects on the page. It's just part of the visual. So all this to say, I think I'm not opposed to using it. I'm not opposed to pushing our team to do it. I'm just going to be very mindful to give my team ample time to learn how to build stuff. Or maybe you should do, Tommy would be an example here, would be, is like, look, I'm going to stylize this button or this KPI card. Here's the objective. The objective is get yours to stylize the same way. Go find the properties that you're doing and kind of give them like a little bit of a workshop. Here's the button I'm going to make. I'm going to walk through and build it. Okay, team, take some time this week. Go open this PBIX file. Go build your own button. See what it works. See what other settings are in there, and just go play around with it, because I think that's how you learn. At least that's how I learn. Seth, you've been quite quiet here. I don't know if you're still distraught about the table matrix here, that not being in official documentation.
I'm just scrolling right now at a table.
No, I think some of the visualizations that have come out obviously strike a chord immediately with people, and they want to use them, and are, with exceptions of like embedded, right? But as you guys are talking about like the added level of effort to learn all the properties, like that's the downside of adding a bunch of properties to things, is it allows for almost a limitless way of which to implement things, right? And could that be intimidating for new users? Yeah, it could be, right? But I think the value behind training, at least to point and say, hey, here are things you can control, and maybe have an example, is you're going to have needs or where these visuals are the only ones that can help you, right? Like the reason I love the investment in the core visuals and why everybody was pushing it from day one is because it's always been a point that Power BI has suffered compared to other tools, right? And in order to tweak all of these visual properties, you need all the properties there, right? And I think what I've seen so far in some of these, in terms of like the implementation after I've learned the properties, is that it starts to make sense. It like, oh, okay, I can tweak this thing. I come in with an idea and figure out how to massage that into this new visual, whereas I didn't even have that option before.
Yeah,
we were immediately forced into like, how can I layer visuals, or what third-party visual do I need to go do? And I mean, if we compare what the level of effort was to get something to look the way we wanted it pre the core like even the card visual with small multiples, like what are you using? Like the level of effort to like try to go through the mental gymnastics of like, how do I make that kind of work on this page and replicate this? And like Miguel or people were doing it in some cases, but what did it take? Man, like it took separate data sets. It took like completely different objects in the model. You're playing with data, right? And now it's a property. So as we make this argument of like, oh, do I want to train people how to use it? I think we're on the easy path, right? Because it's a property now. It's not something that I have to go build into the structure of everything that was there before.
Totally
so
agree.
Am I going to use these in every single case? No, probably not, right? Because there's a mix of, do I need the number, or do I need the number and it needs to look like this, and I'm presenting to this type of audience, so I'm going to invest more time in look and feel, right?
Yeah.
It's not every use case, but having the flexibility of some of these and knowing how much time they're shaving off in the implementations, the way we used to have to do them just to make something look right? Like, I mean, take it as simple as the control around the visual itself. Like we continually, and you can do it in themes, but like you're building a construct behind the scene or the visual, or you're adding something else, or a little, the flares that make the report pop out and stand out, I think are what these new visuals allow us to do natively.
And that's been part of what you're saying too has been an ongoing conversation and discussion on our podcast, and I'm sure with countless other BI professionals, is the balance between pragmatic and or practical and artistic, right? So, and I think there's always that fine line of like, look, I could use some of these nifty advanced features, but I can also get away with it and display the data, because that's what's important, on the visual itself. And you kind of lean to something, Seth, I want to ask you guys too. If I'm an MVP or a pro, or just someone who's using, like I'm a Power BI expert in whatever capacity we're saying, I build reports. What's the expectation for you if you're the data czar or you're the hiring manager on how much someone should know the core visual or the new core visuals? So I think we talked a lot about the product and adoption, but I think then that goes to, what's the expectation for a user, a pro user, in with these new core visuals? Should it be like, I'm aware they exist? Is it I can use them, or I know all the properties inside and out?
For me, it's a mix of you're aware where they're located and that you can do them.
Mhm.
Right, to Mike's point, until you get like a bunch of examples out there, or here's how to set something up and here's the settings you need to do, etc. Like, as like, if you have somebody who's creative, if you're
Sure.
aware of where the things are and like the general properties that you can change.
Yes.
And that's where, like, even with marker styles, right, like the latest thing that they pushed out, with the lines and bars, like, just knowing the capabilities are there and then peeking in there and being like, oh, okay, I can tweak this and this and this. Sweet, right? I know I can do these things now. Not am I an expert? I just spent 3 hours and like name anything and I'll tell you that I can do it here. I think in general, it's the general concepts of this is how I would go perform the thing, because in the future you're going to get presented with a mock, or you're going to encounter some visualization and somebody's going to ask like, hey, can we do this thing? And you could, like, knowing that you can, or that there's a high probability as far as, or versus a hard no, right?
Yes,
Hey, can
yes.
you guys tweak, how much customization can you guys make in a line chart pre anything, right? It's like, well, not much. And in this case, it's like, hey, we can do a lot of things with visuals, like the line charts now with markers and making things, hide or show or whatever. Let me go do a quick 30-minute discovery based on the specific purpose that you have, or like you want it to fit into this mode, or you don't want this outlier, data point. Now I know I can, right? Or it's high probability I can at least create something very similar. And that's what I think I love about all of the work coming out of Miguel, is like, it's with that in mind, right? He's developing new visuals that he's had to like kind of consolidate, but they're useful for data, but also add a whole layer of like better presentation of how we visualize that data.
I agree, and I think this is where I hope the theme generator is kind of producing some gap closure there, Seth. I mean, to this point, like, look, I don't want to care about the data that has to get shoved into the visual. We just need to have data on a visual and just start playing with the settings. Like, what does the label look like? What are the settings of the label? Like, what are all the options we can push into here? So I think there's just, to me, there's just some of this, we need to just be able to go push around the visual and see what it can do. And then from there, we can then play around with it. But it would also, to your point, Seth, it also would be very helpful to have, like, here's a whole bunch of styled things. Like, here's a whole bunch of settings that have just been turned on by the people who've designed things. Here's what this may look like when you've designed it well, kind of stuff. And to me, that's something that I think is very relevant here, is I don't necessarily get that from the way the visuals. And this is where I think AI would be a better position in this area. Like, I think this is what AI should do a better job of. It should read the properties of the visual, and I should be able to say, make this look prettier, make this a dark mode version, make this other things, and it should know how to do that a bit more. And so I think this is where part of, I'd like AI to help us a bit more with supporting the stylizing of the visuals.
Honestly, I really think there's a lot of behavior-based things that we're not recognizing here, because the fact that it is a separate visual, if I were the data czar and I'm hiring, I'm just going to assume someone could eventually figure it out if, like, that's part of their behavior, but I'm not looking for that skill set in the new core visuals, because if they're pretty good at what they do, and I'm already talking to this, like, look, you may not know this, but you're already showcased that you can figure things out. That's one of these things you can figure out in the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to be part of that baseline. But and I think a big part of that is the behavior of, if they were enhancing and adding properties to the current visuals, I think you'd see a lot more adoptions with a lot of these styles. But the fact that they're separated and it's in its own visual, you're not going to get people who are just going to jump ship with something they're much more familiar with. Again, people are that least path of resistance, and that includes us too.
I agree.
I think that includes with a lot of the styles. So yeah, I mean, if I was hiring someone and they were like, I know the core visuals, I played around with it a little, it's fine. It's fine. I don't need anything else, unless, like I said, I'm going in a contest or we really need some new design. But at that point, kind of what you said, Mike, you're looking more designer based. So this is a figure it out one to me. And I don't like that. And I think I'm struggling with that, because I want this to be the norm. I would rather these new visuals be the default for me. And I'm struggling with this for some reason, where I want the new card to be the one I use on default. I want the new text slicer to be the one I use on default.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I'm having a problem reconciling why that's not the case.
I'm not disagreeing with you in any way. I'm just in the point where, it's. I don't disagree with your statements, Tommy. I think we all want it to be a bit more like easier to work with,
Right.
easier to work on. Like I get it, but on the other hand, too, I think there's this dichotomy of like Microsoft is trying to push out brand new features or things that are cutting edge or things they're going to be breaking something, and so they can't legitimately just make it one new item. So like again, this is like the balance of like, hey, we want to push out things that people have been asking for, but we don't want to be burdened by all the tech that we have of the old visual. Because odds are the reason why there's another visual of the same thing is they're rebuilding some core functionality that would break the old visual because of something that just technically doesn't work in the new way they're doing it. So in order for them to get this new feature, they need a physical new item. What I think is happening potentially here, Tommy, is what they're going to do is they're going to make the new visual, make sure the new visual can handle all the things the old visual could do, and they're going to deprecate the old visual and leave the new one. So I think that would be the right plan is keep the old one around long enough that it keeps working. And I don't know I don't know. Maybe we're always going to have two. Maybe it's going to be like they're always going to be there because you have to have some compatibility because the new one's got a new name. Does the new one have full backwards compatibility to the old visual? I don't know yet. Like it's probably not true because of why they've broken it into two pieces. So until they solve that technical problem, this could be one of these other areas where we're going to get something that sits here in preview for a really long time. I'm gonna
hate that. And the reason, like,
I don't know.
I get it. I get why the separate visuals for the things that you're saying. If that is the case where you're building a brand new way in which to do things, but I hope they don't. You can't measure things the same way though. You can't because for instance, if you're going to measure the importance of having the core visual versus the existing, you had to create it as a separate thing. You're hurting adoption for all the reasons that we talked about. Like, why aren't you just pushing people onto the next new thing? Plus, I think some of the challenges that the new core visuals have is there. To your point earlier, there's no reference point. There's no tech documentation. There's no marketing and getting it out there outside of blogs. So how much are people going to glom around it? And I think ultimately, is it worth the investment for Microsoft to go down this path? Absolutely, it is. Like this was and is one of the challenges of having Power BI completely take over spaces, especially Mike, to your point, these aren't even embedded. And that is where you're going to win that market share when your tool allows you to scale in and seamlessly integrate with custom applications.
Yes.
You can't do that right now.
Correct.
Right. And if you can't get to a point with your front end and your visualizations to be like, what reporting tool is this? Like, it's crazy. Like I see you're serving up an iframe, but like it looks exactly like your application in every way. Like, how do I know it's Power BI right now? Because it's clunky. There are absolutely clunky things that don't seamlessly integrate, or I don't have the customization bits that I need on the visuals themselves to make it a seamless experience, right? And I think that to me is what you're going after here is that highly custom that experience that you can build in this structure of Power BI that is going to meet the needs of the business in whatever way that needs to be in the visualization realm. So I think it is worth the investment. I absolutely want to see more of this. I actually want to see more in terms of full adoption of it. And to your point, maybe what would be beneficial there is a compare and a contrast of what these new visualizations like offer up in terms of capabilities versus an old report, like without, right? Like, hey, here's a list of KPIs and here's what your report can look like. If you use the new stuff, here's like 3 different better versions that will obviously visually blow you away, right? But I think maybe that's what's needed just to get more and more of this out there so that people like recognize what they can do and move in that direction more.
I mean, Microsoft learned documentation. They love checkboxes on features available, features unavailable on a table. So that would be a perfect place. But you know what? I think this is inspiring me today, fellas. I'm going to make it a New Year's slightly, maybe Q1 resolution to start this getting incorporated in my training. I'm going to start trying to use these as the default and see what happens, because I think I've been, like I said, hesitant to like say, this is going to be my go-to. This is going to be the default. But I love the text slicer. We haven't even talked about that. That's a completely new visual which I think, goodness, has this been needed, because I've been using custom visuals for this forever.
Have you tested it out yet?
I haven't tested it out yet.
Okay. So
oh no, have you? Oh no, don't. I'm trying to be positive here.
I was wondering if you were intentionally avoiding that one.
No. Oh, so you've been playing with it?
No, originally. So I haven't played with it. I've read all the threads on people who have dove into it. What I initially thought it was going to be is not this current version. And based on the feedback I'm reading, it sounds like it's a little premature as far as usefulness. Because one of the things, a long time ago, there was a third-party slicer out there that like just lets you copy and paste like a ton of like values into it. And I think it's not supported, but I think still people still use it all the time. But it's like, I have a list of identifiers. I want to copy, slap, and paste them in there. It's not there yet. This one's not there yet. And let's just say
we're working on it.
It's an early push out the door.
All right, for the normal standard visuals then. And even this I'm going to try too. I'm going to try on my new reports I'm generating. I'm going to go back to some of my more internal reports and just act as if these were the only ones that exist. And maybe we'll report back in a few months from now. But I think my goal is, if this is the way Microsoft is going, I think if we can all at least agree, I cannot imagine a world where these visuals will just go away and act like not like data marts, but something similar where you just never hear about it again. I think we can all probably assume that these are going to be the default at some point in the future. So I'm going to put that in part of my work strategy now. And by the end of Q1, I want to put this as part of my training. So I'm going to kind of visit back, because we can assume these core visuals cover the baseline of what a standard visual can do. The new card can do everything the old card did. Right?
Sure.
Okay, sure.
I can't speak 100% to that. I mean, I can say, maybe. I mean, it does things slightly different, but is it going to be, technically, can it just be replaced with the old one? I don't know yet. Like, I'm not able to make that answer or that call yet, but I do think like the added features, the enhancements, it's feeling much closer to what I want the card visual to be in the future.
Yeah. Well, that's where I'm going, because I think the biggest part here right now is like, we know I don't think we can wait too long to keep going. Like, wait, I'm not going to start putting this in production until it's GA. Maybe. I mean, I think embedding is a different scenario here, but I think for a lot of the things we do, there's some pretty neat features. They've already had the card out for a while, and I just don't want it to sit there too, because I love these new features. I want these to be part of the
I'm with you all 100%.
So
it's my only hesitation here is like, I just don't want this stuff to get stuck in preview forever. If the lightning bolt means preview and we're not going to get it across the tool and it's never going to turn into a real part of the tool, what's the point of doing it? When are we going to actually make it like the thing, part of the actual product?
Right. And to that though, right? If you assume the new lightning bolt preview visual is going to garner much more adoption than the core one, that's a false assumption. So I hope they're not doing that. Right? There has to be a roadmap on here to make these visuals the core visuals, bar none. There's no we're just going to throw them out there because you can't the extended capabilities that these have are so much better. They're just so much better. If you properly support them and push them out. So this better not be one of those. We'll see how they compare against the existing, because to our points all the time, preview is not the same thing. And I hope there is a roadmap to transfer onto these, or get them in and support the team and get it into the documentation and tooling.
I think on some degree, like Microsoft took an approach with making visuals. I think we're getting to the point right now where the visuals are getting so complex. There's so many settings. There's so much stuff going on there. I feel like the Deneb landscape of making visuals was the right approach. everything should have been all the visual. And this is just totally a side note. I know we're at the very end of the episode here, but like I think Microsoft missed the boat in the fact that they built a bunch of custom visuals that were made a very specific way for users to drag and drop fields into it. What should have been happening, there should have been better utilizing, Deneb, Vega, Vega Lite, already known assets, and making them a user interface that sits on top of them that makes it easy for you to drag and drop fields on standard templates. And I think that
build the full true developer experience.
Developer set, like, look, we're going to build these visuals using code. And then from there, we're going to give you a user interface that's going to be easy to integrate back to the code pieces. And so I think it would have made Microsoft have a lot more flexibility and like what kind of visuals, how fast they could push things out, because it generalizes the whole solution here. There's already a code base that runs and builds the visuals as opposed to having to build every visual custom and new and a lot of extra work. Again, it's a decision strategically they made. It could have been a performance reason. It could have been for whatever reasons they did. They wanted to build custom visuals the way they thought to be building them. But I think it's also kind of bit them a bit now because now you have all this extra tech debt and work done to be able to produce this. And this is where I think like visuals like Charticulator and Deneb are like the best custom visuals you could ever put your hands on because they can do so many different things. And there's a thriving community behind them to really push them forward. So anyways, we'll see where this goes. I think we need to wrap here. I think my final thought is love the visuals, like all the new features. Me personally, a bit overwhelmed, need more time to play with them and work with them to make sure I feel like what's good about them and what's there. My last feeling, I think we are all going to say this as our wrap up is we really want to see them be part of core visuals. That's what we want. Tommy, any other final thoughts?
No, I think that sums it up perfectly. Could not say anything better.
Seth, how about you? Anything else that you'd want to add to that?
Same.
All right. Well, we're all kind of in agreement here. It's just very rare for us. Or not. It depends. That being said, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate your ears today. We know you have you can do a million different things, and one of them is not listening to us. So we appreciate you choosing us over all your other activities that you've been doing. Hope this discussion kind of added some more context around all these new visuals coming out. Good stuff. Definitely check them out. You want to make sure you go play with them. The documentation is on LinkedIn under PBI Core Visuals. That's what you want to go look up on LinkedIn. All the documentation will be there. There's discussions happening. People are talking about it. It's definitely the place to be if you want to learn about these new visuals. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple and Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. Helps us out a ton. Also, please share with other colleagues or friends or on social because we do this for free and we love doing it for you guys. If you have a question, idea, or topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode, head over to powerbi.tip/podcast. Leave your name, a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central. Join the conversation on all Power BI Tips social media channels.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.